Hey, Julie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Always good talking with you. And free range parenting, now not just a concept, not just a philosophy, now it's the law in one state of the union.
Yeah, Utah, just the governor signed a new law that Lenore Skenazy, your friend and mine, has been working on this quite a bit. And very exciting that this law is now in place in Utah. I'll give you a quick explanation. It takes away the ability of police and prosecutors to charge people with neglect if they let their children do normal things like walk to school or play outside unsupervised by their parents or another adult. So this is a real win for those who are free range parents, and it's a win for parenting in general. I've talked a lot about how I think there's sort of three categories of people or of parents. There are the ones who are truly worried and they hover too much, or they hover as they think it's appropriate. Then there are the true free rangers, and those are people who really want to give their children freedom and don't actually feel that nervous about it. There's this huge category, though, in the middle of people who want to be free rangers but are worried that they're going to get in trouble. You pull up to the 7-Eleven and you just want to run in to grab a quick Diet Coke, and you think, am I going to take all my kids out of the car? Well, I guess I have to because this guy's going to pull up next to me and then he's going to call the police, and then my whole life will be ruined. And so you end up, taking the kids out of their car seats and dragging them inside and then taking them out. And so I think one of the benefits of this bill is that it'll reassure parents that, look, you can even make unpopular parenting decisions and you won't be prosecuted. So again, it's a win for all parents and all parenting styles.
Yeah, I mean, and, you talk about leaving the toddlers in the car. You note this in your article at The Hill. This was just this week. There was a mom in Missouri who ran inside the gas station to pay, right? Left her kids in the car. I assume the car was locked, but ran inside long enough to pay, and
Yep.
now could be facing charges. I mean, there's there was news stories about this, police investigating this because she left her kids in the car so she could run to the gas station to pay. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's and again, this isn't, Berkeley, California. This is Missouri we're talking about.
I was limited by word count for that article. There was a little bit more to it, but it doesn't. Basically, she went in to go and pay, but the car was she somehow it went into neutral, or she left it in neutral. It backed up, and it did hit a gas, like a fill up station, or whatever those gas things, and there was a fire. They managed to get the kids out of the car, but again, she didn't mean to do this. She didn't say, you know what, I'm going to leave my kids in the car. I'm going to leave it in neutral. And then, I'm going to go in the 7-Eleven while, while the car explodes. I mean, she didn't mean to do this. And yet it was a mistake. It's an honest mistake. Mistakes happen. And this is another part of free range parenting. There's or rather I should say, there's this trend now to prosecute people for honest mistakes, truly honest mistakes. Nobody's perfect. There isn't a perfect way to parent. They're human. People make mistakes. And yet you see prosecutions, you see charges brought to parents who make mistakes, honest mistakes, and and then they're brought up on charges. There's another example that I give in that of a woman who was sleeping in. Her alarm didn't go off. Her son's alarm, or it went off late. Her son got up. He missed his bus, and he decided to walk to school. Now, in most cases, we would applaud that child. Good job, kid. You're not going to wake up your mom. You're going to get yourself to school. Some police officer or someone called the police. He was picked up, and then they went back to the house. They arrested the mom. They put her in handcuffs for neglect, and simply because her son walked himself to school. So again, here she makes a mistake. She overslept, and she's being brought up on charges. So there are a lot of stories like this. Those were only the four that I only mentioned four in the article. But this happens all over. So again, we need more states to pass these laws to give people, the freedom to make these parenting decisions, again, that they think are best for their families.
Yeah, and it's sad that you're right. It's gotten to the point that you need legislation for this because this was just sort of the norm even a generation ago. But here we are, and maybe now that Utah has become the first in the nation to do this, we'll see this become a trend. Now, I want to ask you about something else that is also, I think, in danger, unfortunately, of becoming a trend. We saw this in a couple of schools, including in Pennsylvania recently, school districts that have asked the NRA Foundation for a grant for their high school, competitive shooting teams. All of a sudden, the school board steps in and says, no, we don't want this tainted money. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Today, actually, this was yesterday, considering turning down what the school board president, Steve Carrillo, called blood money from the NRA Foundation. This was a grant that, again, the school district had asked for from the NRA Foundation for about $4,000 for the ROTC program. And while the school board president says he stands 100% behind the JROTC program, quote, the NRA is an organization that supports one thing and one thing only, the manufacture and sale of firearms, which, he gets all wrong, Julie. But, yeah, I mean, what do you think about this? These school boards that are, thumping their chests and we don't want your dirty money.
Yeah, I actually just want to keep hearing you talk that way instead of me answering. Yeah, look, these sort of empty gestures are very popular among sort of school boards who don't have a lot of power. We saw this in Alexandria City, where I live. The school board passed a resolution, calling for Congress to pass stricter gun laws. And I'm like, you know what? It seems like a school board could do things locally that might improve school safety rather than just demanding Congress do something. But this is what they do. School boards do these kinds of things. And look, we need to remember the philosophy of a lot of these people. Gun safety isn't learning how to properly use a gun and learning how to properly store a gun, clean a gun. It is not having a gun. So this is consistent with a lot of what we're seeing out there. But again, these sort of gestures that come out of school boards, they just don't have a lot of power and they want to appear that they're doing things. So they make these sort of grand gestures, resolutions, statements, press releases that really don't say a whole lot. This one, though, isn't unfortunate because this is exactly how you reduce safety among firearms is discouraging education, discouraging experience with firearms. That's exactly how when you teach kids about firearms, when you teach them about firearm safety, that makes everyone safer. But again, I think it's just the culture we live in, and among certain communities and certain school boards and certain politicians, the only answer is getting rid of guns. That's the only way to keep people safe, and we know that that's the opposite of that's not going to work.
What's fascinating, I mean, these school boards, again, the ones that I've seen have sort of gone out of their way to say, we're not against guns, we're just against the NRA's money, which, when it comes to the NRA Foundation, this is money that's actually raised right there in the local community. About half goes to national grants, and then about half is distributed right there in the area. And so it's, you're saying, I don't want your neighbor's money. I don't want your pharmacist's money. In Pennsylvania, it was actually interesting when the school board there, I think it was Stroudsburg District High School, when they pulled this grant, local NRA members who were business owners within 24 hours said, okay, we're going to step up and we're going to fund this program. And they did, raising almost $7,000 like within a day. I suspect if the school board in Santa Fe, ends up rejecting this grant, you'll likely see the same thing. But what's so sad, again, is that, these school boards, we don't want anything to do with the NRA's money. The reason why they don't, Julie, is because they can't accept this goes against their narrative. Right? Their whole narrative is the NRA is about one thing, manufacturing guns. Well, clearly not, because they're also giving grants to the JROTC program. So clearly it's not just about manufacturing firearms. But they can't, what's really sad, I guess, is the cognitive dissonance on display by people who are school board members. These are people who I would think would be able to engage in critical thinking. And yet they're so blinded by their ideology that they can't even see what's right there in their face.
Yeah. And again, it just bothers me because I feel like, I've taught my children, the whole Eddie Eagle program, and they understand what to do if they see a gun. It makes me feel safe. And, eventually we're going to, go to the range with them, and we're going to, teach them how to shoot. And, they're a little young at this point, but this is, to me, this is how you raise children to understand how firearms work and to understand how gun safety works. And so it's just so concerning to me to see these communities rejecting all of this money that can go to education and training, and to really help keep kids safe. It's just as you say, the cognitive dissonance, and it's just frustrating, I think, as a mom to see so many kids marching on Washington in my own community, demanding safer schools, demanding more safety, and then rejecting money that can actually make that happen.
Julie Gunlock with the Independent Women's Forum. It is always so good talking with you. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
We'll do it again soon.